Thank you, everybody. My name is Eduardo Esparza. I was born in Mexico City. At 8, I moved to Mexicali, a city that is probably not supposed to exist. It's a city built on what used to be the wetlands of the Colorado River Delta, carrying nourishments from all of the basin into the Sea of Cortez. I grew up drinking water and taking showers on water that came from these mountains here. And so one day I wondered where my water came from, and that led me to Colorado. In recent days, I had the privilege to walk the lands of Colorado and a place close to the Delta with two incredible people from the Wiwa tribe in Colombia. What they perceive and what they see can only sometimes be described as magic. We walked the lands in the south, in Mexico, in a place where I plan to start a motion to build a regenerative city of the future we call La Perla. This is a 1,000-meter elevation. Remember the images that were shown earlier today from the Delta, all the desert? All that's supposed to be flooded with Colorado River water. The Colorado River no longer flows down there. We reach 56 degrees Celsius, which is about 125 this summer. The projections are that that land is going to become uninhabitable in just a few years. I don't know. Nobody has the right prediction in terms of time. So I want to build a new city called La Perla. It's a 1,000-meter elevation, the mountain corridor that runs between Mexicali, Imperial Valley, and Tijuana. And I plan to join forces with the headwaters, because we're all united by the same basin, several bioregions along the way. I walked the lands with these two incredible people from the Wiwa community, and we saw happy sites in the Grand Mesa. We saw healthy ecosystems. We saw sacred lakes welcoming us and healing us. And we also saw lands that were sick, soils that were dried and crumbled, branches of trees that were falling, and plants that were sick. And we asked, what can we do? How can we ask for forgiveness? And Mamo, Rodrigo, and Zaga, Josafina told us how. So we have to offer pagamentos to the land. We have to honor the land. And connecting with the land is the base foundation for a new future. Without doing that, every effort is a technicality, and it becomes irrelevant. What have we done? We have believed the myth of entitlement and private property. We saw it in the documentary last night. It's the earth. We are tiny, little, finite humans, certainly with infinite souls, but how can we be entitled to own the earth and do as we please with it? How have we come to believe the myth of scarcity and glorifying superficialities? We live in a paradigm of extraction, consumption, and disposal. We're trashing the planet. We're eating ourselves into extinction. We have disrupted the coherence of systems. The damage is systemic, and yet the solutions that are on the table are fragmented. That's not enough. If the damage is systemic, solutions should be systemic. Anything less than that is insufficient. We must restore coherence. We must organize ourselves around nature. Anything else doesn't make any sense. I would like to welcome Mamo Rodrigo to deliver a message for us, which I will translate. Mamo Rodrigo, te quisiera donar la palabra para que nos dé un mensaje acerca de lo que vio y somos todos oídos. I will translate for you.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Estamos aquí presentes, escuchando las conversaciones, hablando de la naturaleza.
We're here present, listening to conversations and listening to you speaking about nature.
En nuestra tradición, para escuchar la palabra, vamos a ser de pies.
In our tradition, to listen to the word, we have to stand up. Please stand up.
Entonces, aquí estando presente,
Being here present,
haciendo pagamento a la naturaleza.
offering pagamentos or offerings to the nature.
Así como nos dejaron desde el principio, Seranqua nos dijo,
Seranqua told us from the beginning,
proteger los signos vitales de la planeta Tierra.
we must protect the vital signs of planet Earth.
Seranqua nos dijo, nosotros somos corazón del mundo.
Seranqua told us, we are the heart of the world.
Y hoy en día estamos preocupados
And today we're worried
por disminución del hielo,
the reduction of the ice sheet,
calentamiento global,
global warming,
huracanes en el planeta.
hurricanes around the world.
La naturaleza comenzó a cobrar.
Nature started to ask for payback.
Los hermanitos piensan, están haciendo progresos grandes,
Our little brothers, which this is how they describe the Western world. Little brothers believe that they're making progress.
pero para nosotros es la destrucción.
But for us, that means destruction.
La madre tierra está muy triste.
Mother Earth is very sad.
Nos comenzaron a llamar de distintos espacios para cancelar las deudas que estamos debiendo con la naturaleza.
They started calling us from different places to cancel the debt we have accumulated with nature.
Los hermanitos piensan sembrar, encerrar los huecos, sembrar árbol. Esa sería solución, pero no es solución.
Little brothers believe that planting a bunch of trees is a solution and closing some gaps is a solution, but that's not nearly a solution.
Desde el principio nos dijeron realizar pagamento a la naturaleza,
From the
pagamento de aires, pagamento de árboles, pagamento de animales.
From the beginning, they told us that we must offer pagamentos to nature, to
Pagamento de agua.
trees, water, rocks, animals.
Los sabedores nos dijeron
Wise men told us
hacer prácticas
we must practice
de distintos espacios.
of different kinds and spaces.
Hacer pagamento con los objetos sagrados,
We must offer pagamentos with sacred objects,
restaurar los espacios,
restore the spaces,
restaurar conocimientos,
restore knowledge,
conservar el código.
conserve the code.
Por eso estamos aquí presentes para compartir. Me ha parecido muy importante de venir a hacer pagamento en este espacio, Sierra de Colorado, pagamento de los árboles.
That's why we're here. We're very honored to be here making pagamentos in the Colorado region, pagamentos to the trees,
Pagamento de las rocas,
to the rocks.
más enferma todavía.
They're very sick.
Pagamento de lagos,
pagamentos to the lakes,
y pagamento de aires.
and pagamentos to the air.
Si no hacemos este pagamento, naturaleza va a venir a cobrar a través de las tormentas,
If we don't make these pagamentos, nature will come and asking for payback through
a través de
storms
huracanes.
and hurricanes.
No hay quien lo frene.
There's no one that can stop that.
Por eso hemos venido a hacer pagamento a la naturaleza. Naturaleza nos dice,
That's why we came to make pagamentos to nature.
Necesita-
Nature's telling us
muchos pagamentos para restaurar esos nacimientos de agua.
we need a lot of pagamentos to restore the birth of water,
Padre espiritual de los árboles.
the spiritual father of the trees.
Y hay muchos templos en estos espacios, templos antiguos que son la montaña, en donde está archivado todos los conocimientos.
There's lots of temples in these areas where there's a lot of knowledge stored.
Estuvimos caminando varios espacios de Colorado, en las zonas rocosas,
We
en
walked,
las zonas de los árboles, en las zonas de los lagos.
we walked several spaces through Colorado, the Rockies, lots of trees and lakes.
Naturaleza nos dijo, está muy cerca para terminar las nieves.
Nature told us that the times are coming where the snowpack will end.
Por eso venimos aquí a hacer la presencia para poder hacer la conexión con Sierra Nevada, Gonabindúa, Abimundúa.
That's why we're here, to make a connection with the Sierra Nevada,
Necesitando un gran apoyo para poder restaurar esos espacios que los hermanitos han sido endueñados.
We need a lot of support to restore those spaces that the little brothers have appropriated.
Agradecido bastante con hermano Eduardo y con los restos participantes. Gracias por esta gran invitación y esta era la que quería compartir.
We're very grateful to be invited to participate in these pagamentos with the locals, and we're very happy to be invited.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Vamos a sentarnos.
Thank you. I'd like to open the rest of the discussion with an acknowledgement, right? It is our relationship, it is kinship. It is a relationship between humans beyond transaction and relationship towards non-human animals and inanimated world beyond use that will restore coherence. I would like to open with an exploration of the problem. Jeremiah and Alex, would you mind first introducing yourselves and then giving us a little bit of your perspective of the problem as we're seeing it here in Colorado, in the headwaters?
My name is Alex Corren. I'm the co-founder and executive director of an organization called Recommon. We are focusing on building systems to address the converging crises because, like has been discussed today, nothing exists in isolation. These problems are all connected to one another, and complex problems require complex solutions. So our approach is through bioregionalism, community land trusts, and embedding regenerative and ecological principles into those systems from the very beginning. I can pause there and we can get more into all of that in a moment.
My name's Jeremiah Garcia. I currently work for a municipality as the water system manager, and we happen to have some sacred springs that feed our town. And although there isn't a conflict yet, I'm feeling the existential crisis of climate change and our headwaters and all the people downstream. I'll just be succinct with that for now.
Jeremiah, well, you are overseeing all the water problematic in the region, in one of the main areas that connect to the Colorado River, right? The Paonia area, North Fork, Roaring Fork Valley, North Fork Valley. Unpack a little more what you're seeing there.
Mostly negligence. I'm seeing negligence of our public lands. I'm seeing occupation on private lands and wetlands being displaced for cattle, unhealthy forests, and generally the economic bottom line dominating the space and displacing nature.
Yeah, resource extraction and drought vulnerability, triggered by fragmented property, right? I mean, there's not a holistic view of the valley, and that's a problem. Tell us about, from the community standpoint, what are you seeing?
Definitely a desire to align with beaver. I think beaver are the unsung heroes of the Colorado West, and not a lot of good entry points for living and breathing the work to rehabilitate the western slopes.
What happens if we continue to do business as usual? Give us your perspective, Jeremiah, and Alex also. What do you think? Where is this going?
So in the short term, because there isn't resiliency embedded into our headwaters, we're going to see farm operations failing, and then that land probably being acquired by multinational interests who are just going to speculate on the land. It's been the pattern that we're seeing, is just land speculation of our land, our headwaters, our water.
Alex?
Yeah, it's the fragility of our systems will continue to get exposed as climate volatility continues. You know, time and time again, we see examples of these critical life support and civilizational support systems failing. We have issues on the community level that lead to the loneliness epidemic, increased suicide rates, you know, people medicating themselves into oblivion. And on the other side of that is the environmental destruction and resource extraction that seemingly has no end. And so all of those things combined, if we don't create new systems, if we don't implement new strategies to approach these things, it's just going to continue bringing communities down to their knees, bringing ecosystems down to their knees. And holistic solutions need to be put in place to avert this from happening. Because if we don't act, and if we don't start to show others that these new systems are possible, you know, if people don't have a vision of a positive future, there's no real direction to move towards. And in the world today, there's countless examples of dystopian futures and ways that it can go wrong. But there need to really start being examples of what these new systems and models for coexisting and being part of the natural world instead of the illusion of being separate from it. We need to enact those now and start building those now.
I have just a little bit of time in Colorado. I came after questioning where my water was coming from and ended up in Paonia. And one of the first things that I saw is a fragmentation. Lots of good intentions, lots of knowledge about regeneration, but happening within the boundaries of my own land, everybody, right? And there's a lot of new energy, and it's very positive. The thing we're missing is a unifying vision of what is the potential at a valley level. What is the potential for everybody? And I want to call for this amazing exercise that you're spearheading, Jeremiah. You're spearheading a headwaters resiliency plan. And I see a lot of hope in that. Can you please describe for us what is the headwaters resiliency plan?
So it's not a wheel that I'm recreating. Fortunately, the Department of Interior has seen the need to fund headwater resiliency plans, strategies, and what it looks like essentially is convening water rights stakeholders to come up with a comprehensive watershed resiliency plan that'll mitigate wildfire risks, flooding, and embed drought resiliency. That's it in a nutshell. But so what we're, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Okay, yeah. So from the municipality's perspective, our water system, our springs were tapped in 1902, and not a lot of protracted thinking went into developing those systems. And as a consequence, what we're seeing is aquifers aren't getting properly recharged because their points of diversions are in the wrong spots. But we have ranch owners in those aquifers where it makes sense to have the point of diversion. So it's just been so fragmented that really we need to bring everybody together, including the indigenous elders, which they're not in our community, and we need to invite them in to come up with a comprehensive plan that meets everybody's needs in the short term. I'll leave it at that for now.
Well, something that struck me about the headwaters resiliency plan is that it is holistic. You look at an entire hydrology system, and I believe that's one of the key things we need, right? I mean, but one of the things that come to mind is that this cannot only be a government project. It cannot be in isolation and end up in a binder somewhere, right? We need multi-stakeholder participation on this. In brainstorming with Jeremiah, I was saying like, hey, headwaters resiliency plan, oh my God, this is like the plan to restore hydrology for the entire valley. And this can create so many opportunities for investment, for prosperity. And we spoke about how key intervention points in the valley, restoring wetlands, can improve the hydrology of the entire valley. Can you speak a little bit about that? You have more knowledge about this.
Can you ask the question again?
Just describe the key leverage points.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the key leverage points, like at the pattern level, it's obvious because the mountain will tell you. The mountain will tell you where the key lines are, where the key points are, and so there's wetlands that need to be rehabilitated. We also need to restore forest health. One issue that we're having, even though last year we had amazing snowpack, the forests are in such a decline that snow is just melting off in the spring. I was looking at some stream gauges and comparing them over the last 30 years, and the spring flows were just like blowing away all the other records, and then by the time you get to June and July, we're in a drought condition again. So there's a lot of leverage points. I don't know which one to narrow in on. I guess one simple solution would be, even what I love about right now is that the ranchers, they might not like the term climate change, but they don't disagree with aridification and desertification. That's the language I like to use when I'm talking to them. that it's drying out and we need solutions. And they're like, you're right. And so they're, you know, I don't think anybody has the capital to put up game fences, but they're putting those collars on their cattle, and they're willing to like keep their cattle out of certain areas. And an area in particular that comes to mind is along Bell Creek, where if you go up at the right time, you can see the aspen trying to come back. But then the cattle come in and they graze down the aspen, and the management is such that the beaver habitat isn't able to come back. Hopefully the wolves help with that and chase the cattle away from the streams. But that's an obvious leverage point for me, is like just letting beaver habitat come back and creating beaver dam analog, and then allowing the beaver to move in. And actually, I don't know how we have a cultural change with some of the ranchers who think it's fun to just shoot the beaver, but we need to honor the beaver. You know, that's one simple leverage point that comes to mind.
Yeah, and what are some ideas that come to mind, Alex or Jeremiah, about increasing participation? How can we effectively bring together stakeholders to execute some of these plans at the landscape level?
Maybe you can say something about basic needs and equity.
Yeah, so it seems like one of the reasons that these multi-stakeholder systems haven't really emerged to support these types of activities is because there is no way for these stakeholders to engage. You know, apart from the conventional routes of engaging with local governments, when it comes to land ownership and the use of that land and proper use and remediation of these spaces, there's really not much way for people to engage. And so, like, what we've been working on is to create these systems that incorporate community land trust style governance to actually get land out of the speculative private market, put it into trust that is reserved for proper ecological use and regenerative community development and landscape remediation, and build into the trust, which is now the owner of that land, these multi-stakeholder governance systems, which invite people to participate and actually give them a seat at the table. One of the areas of innovation that we've brought to this, because it's based off of the classic community land trust model, we call it the regenerative community land trust model, is to incorporate rights of nature and indigenous wisdom directly into the governance structure itself. So apart from having ecology and regeneration embedded into the bylaws and leaseholds that allow people to access and use this land, we're actually giving nature and people that can speak on behalf of nature a voice at the table that is in such a way that the capital providers, the other business owners on the land, their voices can never outnumber and be louder than the voice of nature. So that is a multi-stakeholder system that we're actively working on and deploying. Another important piece, and this has kind of been spoken to today in the past couple of days, relates to bioregionalism, which when we think of activism, when we think of organizing together, coming up with solutions, enacting plans, implementing these things, there's this big question of place, of scale, because a bioregion for certain definitions is the entire Colorado River Basin, which is many different landscapes, thousands of miles. And it's hard to maybe identify with that bioregion because, like, for example, I live up in the mountains west of town here in the Southern Rockies. And, you know, going out to where Jeremiah lives, if you continue west, you're on the Colorado Plateau. And the Colorado Plateau is intimately connected with the Southern Rockies. The Southern Rockies is the headwaters, but they're vastly different landscapes. So bringing stakeholders together through these natural patterns found in bioregionalism is key. And it kind of goes from that higher level entire Colorado River Basin scale to then smaller bioregional nodes, as we call them, or type 3 ecoregions according to the EPA, but that would be the Southern Rockies, the Colorado Plateau, things like that. But then it gets to the community level, where you can actually start to look at the granularity of who are the landowners that we need to bring into this, because we can literally look at this valley here that's part of this tributary and see these intervention points. So there's different stakeholders that need to come into the picture at different scales, and different scales are appropriate for different types of action. Like at the Colorado River scale, that could be a more appropriate convening stakeholders around changing policy, changing these, long entrenched water rights that are damaging the environment and are just not right. But then on the local community scale, the bioregional community scale in the North Fork Valley, which is part of this greater Colorado River watershed, that's where you can enact plans. That's when you can say, hey, we should, as a trust, as a group here, as a community, try to acquire that property from that rancher so we can convert it to regenerative use or get them on board with what we're doing. But looking at these different scales and pulling together stakeholders that are appropriate at these different scales to enact different plans and different types of action is key.
What's a good place to start with that? What's a good place to start with bioregional organizations? Like, what's your perspective?
A good place to start is maybe individually what you resonate with. So some people are called more towards larger actions and maybe getting involved with a whole Colorado River Basin group or effort to, talk to politicians. If you're called to that, cool, act on that level. Because there's other people where their work is with hands in the dirt, actually moving cattle around, a rotational grazing situation. Another important one is to make an effort to connect to place, because like the beautiful images that were shown before, like these patterns are pervasive all through nature. And wherever we are, whatever place that we call home, we can learn these patterns. We can learn the way that the wildlife acts and the weather moves. And that can then inform our decisions and what the right form of action is and what the plan should be that we get together with our community members. Because if it's disconnected from place, it's probably going to be wrong. Place-based action, place-based thinking is the way forward. And the beauty is that pattern of place-based and bioregionalism you can apply anywhere in the world. Because this is not some top-down solution. This is literally a bottom-up, looking at the natural world, saying what's here, what wants to happen, how can I become a part of this system and a participant in it in the way that it wants to be, instead of putting my will as someone who thinks they're separate from nature upon this place.
You're talking about seeding. Thank you. You're talking about seeding new communities with this mindset, right? What is the bottleneck right now, do you think? What are some of the bottlenecks to transition into a bioregional organization?
Well, existing communities, there are some beautiful examples of communities that have the right bones and the right people there that can just kind of switch to a regenerative mindset and things can really start humming along. I think Peonia is a great example of that. It's a beautiful agricultural community. There's already a great mindset for organic agriculture, for seeing, the desert encroaching upon the mountains and all the, contentions around water. But a lot of communities, it doesn't matter how many Band-Aids you apply to them, are really inherently destructive and are by design degenerative. And I think we're all in for a rude awakening if we think that we can just, protect the, natural areas that are intact, remediate some places, but not change the way that we humans exist on the surface of this planet. Because at a certain point, like if you're living in a home that's constantly requiring tons of energy to stay hot, to stay warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and you are in an environment that, you know, the built environment has no management of the rainwater that falls, and then all of a sudden any significant rain event floods people out. You know, this is all intimately connected with the multiple crises that we're facing related to ecology. And so there's this amazing opportunity to do community development that is in harmony with nature and is truly regenerative, using natural building, using permaculture, using all of these independent solutions, but weaving them together on a community level. Because affordable housing is another huge problem that isn't exactly, you know, super aligned with the agenda that was here this weekend, but it's a part of it. All of these crises that we're facing are a part of it. And so there's this opportunity to build new communities to allow people to truly live in harmony with the environment in these place-based ways that reflect the local vernacular, that reflect the local environment, and actually lead to thriving human communities. And thriving human communities that are not separate from nature and are not separate from place, but are deeply embedded into place. And we need those examples because, you know, small retrofit projects here and there are just not gonna get us where we need to be fast enough. And we, especially here in the Front Range, you know, how many different communities between here and Denver are, oh, new homes starting in the 400,000s, new homes starting in 300,000s, made out of toxic materials without the health of anybody in mind and purely for developers' profits. So what if we took even a fraction of that development capacity and applied it in these regenerative, you know, agricultural communities? And the other analog that I like to think of is we used to form communities and towns around extraction. A mine would, you know, pop up, or an oil refinery would pop up, and communities would form to support that work. So how can we mobilize and form communities around this landscape regeneration work? Because that needs to happen. We need to mobilize lots of people to have hands in the dirt and shovels out in the woods doing this stuff to help remediate these landscapes. So maybe we can form communities around this work as well.
I wonder if we can hold them to the end. Are they super relevant right now?
There's 4 minutes. 4 minutes.
Okay, yeah. I have 3 minutes, that's what it means? Okay.
Microphone, can't hear what you're saying.
We want to know what Big Brother, what these wonderful people do when they're out in nature, what prayers they say. What can we do? What can we do to emulate that? And what perhaps, if we were willing to share some of the code.
Okay. In order not to interrupt the flow, I mean, do you mind if I can close this topic first, and then we can circle back to your question? We have 5 more. So, just circling back just for a moment on the topic of seeding a new model of development. Okay, can you describe a little bit more for us, more vividly, what these regenerative communities feel and look like?
I'd say they reflect the local vernacular. They are an expression of the community that they're embedded in, which means that from an architectural perspective to reading the landscape and, you know, designing the community first by how the water moves through a landscape, and looking at how the wildlife moves through a landscape, all of those are essential components to what this could look like. The idea is also not to have the current development patterns that we're also used to, which is single-family home lots spread out on, you know, a couple acres, but instead to have these villages built in the way that we've been building villages for thousands of years, which is gentle density clustered together, surrounded by agricultural areas and wilderness areas, which is not a pattern of development that we see in the United States. But when you think about even, you know, European villages that people love to visit and take pictures of. You know, these are human-scaled environments that are inspiring to walk through. And you can, you know, sit down at a cafe and look out in nature, and you know, you actually want to enjoy your time in these spaces, whereas most of the developed and urban environments that we have today in the US are uninspiring. You want to get in and get out as quickly as possible. So, you know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with zoning and code to make this happen, but there's definitely a beautiful design pattern that, again, does not need, no wheel needs to be reinvented. It's all just design choices.
Jeremiah, any comments on that? Very good. All right, so the proposal, more specifically, is that the Headwaters Resilience Plan and putting this together with bioregionalism, it's almost easier to look at valley-wide or large-scale regeneration, because then we can move levers, right, that allow us to trigger and change those key leverage points, right? When we can leverage the entire landscape, then it's easier to act. It's almost easier to do a North Fork Valley-wide project and look at the entire valley as a single initiative. And so, well, I'd like to close it with that. Thank you very much. We have, now to your question. Do you mind repeating your question?
Why don't we ask our brother to say a closing prayer? He's come all the way from Colombia.
Well, there was a question here I'm trying to honor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mamo, Rodrigo va a tener una pregunta, señora.
Señora y señor, we would like to know what the big brothers are telling us here in the United States and in Colorado.
Quisieran saber qué es lo que
Hold on.
los grandes hermanos.
We would like to know what prayers you say to our nature here.
Quisiéramos saber
Please tell
cuáles son
us.
las oraciones que ustedes le dan a la naturaleza aquí.
Please tell us. We will very much appreciate your wisdom. Also, please, if you can, tell us a little bit about the code, if you can share that sacred information.
Quisieran saber acerca del código que describió anteriormente.
Quizá vamos a ser de pie, porque para poder hablar de nuestro ancestro se necesita
Stand up.
un día entero. Entonces,
To be able to
vamos a
speak
hacer,
about our ancestors, we almost will need an entire day.
entonces vamos a hacer pequeños meditación o llamado Jonageshi. Vamos a hacer porque pagamento significa mucho. Pagamento, para explicar pagamento, se necesita un día entero, que es muy cortico para nosotros, un día entero.
We'd like to do a meditation here because to do a full pagamento, it will require a full day. However.
Entonces, vamos a hacer un pequeño, escuchar este grande mensaje de Adeshe Abushe. Son padre espiritual de los 4 hermanos de la montaña, que son padre espiritual de los árboles, de aires, de las rocas, de los animales.
From the spiritual fathers,
De agua.
from the waters, airs, and trees.
Vamos a hacer un pequeños, los hermanitos la llaman oración, pero para nosotros se llama Jonageshi. Entonces, vamos a utilizar el código para que la naturaleza nos pueda escuchar en este momento.
Okay, we're going to use the code for nature to listen to
Vamos a
us in
decir entre todos
this moment.
que naturaleza nos escuche, nos espere nuestra reliquia que vamos a cancelar. Entonces vamos a hacer un pequeños, me acompaña la palabra cuando expresen. Adeshe Abushe.
Adeshe Abushe, let's repeat.
Zen Riguaro. Zen Jakle.
Zen Jakle,
Duni.
Duni,
Hakura.
Hakura,
Adeshe,
Adeshe,
Nakameda Awakwai,
Nakwaleda Anakwai,
Chinaguana Awakwai,
Sinuana Anakwai,
Kaingwe,
Enwi,
Geganjina,
Zikanjina,
Akujiwanjina,
Akunjidanjina,
Burtanjina, Jiwanjina, Nantukua, Awakwa, Riguarun. El código es hablar, conversar con la naturaleza. Cuando hacemos pagamento, la naturaleza nos escucha. Es-
Code is to converse with nature. When we're making a pagamento, nature is listening to us.
Pagamento es traerle doctor para que pueda sanar a estos espacios.
Pagamento is like bringing a doctor to heal the space.
Entonces, muy agradecidos los hermanitos, hablando la restauración de los espacios sagrados del planeta.
We're very grateful for the little brothers to be speaking about
Hay
nature
muchos
restoration.
espacios que nos esperan.
There's a lot of spaces awaiting for us.
Entonces, muchas gracias. Vamos a hacer una vuelta por la derecha, por favor.
Thank you very much, and let's turn to the right ones. So we'll turn like that. Just once. Thank you. Thank you.